we will have our second panel discussion of the evening. And this is talking more on digitization that is happening in the pharma industry and how, when we are talking about Pharma 4.0, how do the life sciences companies leverage this digitization for more better efficiency and achieving operational excellence. So for this panel discussion, again, we have a very eminent set of panelists, and it's my pleasure to call them on stage. We have Narendra Saini, Chief Digital Officer of Lupin. We have Anirudh Galgali, Director Strategy, Cipla Europe and Emerging Markets. We have Dr. Manjul Joshipura, Senior Vice President, Cadila Pharma. We have Kishan Kendre, Global Head, Information Security at Sun Pharma. And from the solution provider perspective, we have Senthil Kumar V. He's the Vice President and Business Head of Industrial Automation at Schneider. So I'll just wait 1 minute for Mr. Narendra Saini to step in, and then we will start this discussion. Yes, I can see him here. Thank you. When we are talking about digital transformation journey which pharma companies are undertaking and how they can achieve operational excellence and in consonance with the theme of the evening, how even sustainability can be an outcome of that digital transformation. But before we get on to all this, a very fundamental basic question. How are the pharma companies, and this I will ask to all the four pharma companies who are here, how are the companies looking at the investments that are being made in their whole digital transformation exercise? And when you are making that X investment, at the same time, obviously, one, you have to look at optimizing your production, as well as keeping the business profitable. So how do you balance between that investment and optimizing your productivity as well as profitability? To manage it on time, I would request each panelist to speak 2 minutes on this, and I'll start with you, Narendra Saini, on this.
The first one in the class always gets a tough question, right? Hi, good evening, everyone, and pleasure to be here. Thanks, Rajneesh. So, I think investments as of today in digital space is also seen as a ROI backed or a business case backed investment, right? So, when you talked about so the two key levers is one is how you increase your top line, and second is how you do the margin improvement. So all the lever that we are probably talking about right now is about margin improvement, and it can come into different aspects. So digital or any investment in digital is seen as how we can reap the benefit. So whenever we look at a specific use case, you have to first justify. In fact, in my case, it happens. I don't know. My colleague will probably have a better situation than me. Justify the investment. It could be maybe 1 year, 2 year, or maybe 3 year kind of a return. It may not be immediately for this year in itself, but justify the investment. You have to look at what are the foundational system that you are setting up and what are the benefits that you are taking from that one with respect to each use case that you build on top of the foundation system, right? So maybe I can add up later. So you gave me just 2 minutes, so
sure.
That's over.
So primarily measurable ROIs which can justify and having smaller use cases. Yes, Anirudh, your point of view.
Thank you so much. So I think if you look at our journeys 4, 5, 10 years back, I think most of us as business managers used to start questioning whether do we need to invest in digital. I think we have crossed that bridge. And today, I would not look at a investment in a digital project in isolation, but rather think about creating a digital ecosystem. And let me elaborate what I mean by that. Today, at least for pharma companies, mainstream companies in India, you would have multiple stakeholders. You have the whole doctor community on one side. You have the channels, which is your retailers, distributors, on the other side. You have your own teams, which is your internal customer or a stakeholder. And then you have patients. Now, all of them, if you start running projects in isolation and measure an ROI, it can get very tricky and at times make it unfeasible. But over a period of last 4-5 years, at least the journey in Cipla, we have started looking at the broader impact and that will give us continuity of business and therefore bend the curves up north.
Okay.
Now, coupled with all of this is the investments which go in the internal processes upliftment. Okay. So I would look at investments in digital with a very different lens today, but my answer would have been very different 4 years back.
Exactly. Thanks. So primarily, if I may sum it up, having the digital ecosystem and ensuring that each stakeholder component in that ecosystem are properly synchronized. Dr. Manjul.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us here. I think, to be honest, the industry is under pressure to get automated and invest in information technology and digitization. It's been a history now that our business processes, as top 30, 40 companies in India are digitized. If you take about sales operations, MIS, marketing has a big now digital influence. So that part is pretty much settled with any other businesses. Now we're talking about the pharma 4.0. So we are looking at more now on the manufacturing, quality, R&D, investing, automation, and digital technology out there, because the other part is more or less fixed. And I mean, we are not exception. I'm sure you would find that when we make our annual plans, earlier the capex, that used to have headings for facility and equipment and whatever else. Now today, digital information, what are you going to invest in information technology? That has become a norm, right? So every company, and just not us, but top 30, 40, 50 companies would have capex reserved. This is a bracket, there's a line as what you are going to invest in automation in coming years. And there's a sort of two-way pressure in the sense that the management and the investors want improved productivity, improved profitability, and better quality, right? So, and we I mean, technology is empowered, all this, they have a positive impact on all this. You can improve the productivity, profitability, of course, we need to talk about a lot of things on productivity side. How can it improve the productivity, lesser machine time, lesser manpower time, and so on and so forth. And of course, the quality part, that is also important, that we want a better quality product. And I just want to, in last 30, 40 seconds, I just want to talk about the, how important the quality is, because we just, went through USFDA inspection just last month, and we realized that, how strong the regulatory challenges are coming up. So unless we gear up for, this, exactly. we run a risk of, losing the, real opportunity that we have in front of an industry. Thank you.
Thanks. So you are focused on the quality part. I'll come back to later on more on the regulatory issues. That's an important point of discussion today. But you have focused that along with productivity and profitability, quality is also another very, if I may say, pertinent component here. Kishan, the same question to you.
I will give a different perspective because I am from a cybersecurity background. So with respect to the Pharma 4.0, previously the things used to happen manually only. But now due to the digitization, everything is running in a faster way. We want to do the quality checks on the flies. We want to have the audit done without any hassles. So the technology will come into a picture. Means previously we don't know that where we used to keep these data because of the boundaries has been changed from our on-premise to the cloud. My colleague has just mentioned about the operational technology like OT, where the actual manufacturing happens. But we now in the Pharma 4.0 we are looking to bring that to a cloud services where the processing and more things coming from the governments or the regulatory bodies to automate the data which we want to send it to them.
Exactly.
Like if I remember, for most of the countries, we have to submit the whatever the goods product which we are producing it, we have to submit these details to them, but in a secure way, which we wanted to say that. And then apart from that, I always give this particular example, why this Ferrari have the brakes. So everybody gives an answer saying that they can so we can break it or something like that. I normally give an answer saying that we can go faster and faster. So business is the Ferrari, and
Exactly.
the IT is the brake for that. So that's the analogy which I
Sure.
give to know.
Thanks. So that's an interesting analogy, and you have made an important point. When you have digital transformation, a lot of these the operations are moving to a more hybrid cloud kind of. There are multiple clouds. Some can be on private cloud, some on public cloud, and then certain applications are on the edge also. And then you are managing that scenario. So security is a big challenge there. Even other than that, smoothly synchronizing the whole thing. So now I'll come to you, Senthil. Now you have heard 4 perspectives. ROI perspective, you have heard the regulatory perspective, the quality perspective, the automation and a multi-cloud environment perspective. So now, from a solution provider perspective, when you are working with these and some other large life sciences companies, what would your advice be while they can look at their investment and keep in mind all these factors which have been discussed? Senthil.
Thank you very much. Interesting perspectives. Productivity, profitability, quality, ROI. One simple answer, smarter control, more digitizations. I would approach 3 ways. First is smarter control. And what do we mean by that? In all an industrial and production environment, we all know that there are multiple layers. L1, we call it in Schneider 3 layers, an ecostructure, where the layer 1 is the connect layer. We connect all the devices in the plant. If you look at in the last 2 to 3 decades, earlier the purpose of this devices which connected was to specifically perform some function. Now they get more connected last decade with industrial protocols, more proprietary protocols. But now what you see is that the connected devices are getting more intelligent, more data. Okay, so that's the first point of getting smarter. From the connect, then you go to the second layer, L2 we call it, which edge control you mentioned, which is a collect layer. Once all these data are available, and that's where the process control and the kind of technologies we get into the process control and the advancement is extremely good to analyze all the parameters and provide solutions where you take the business stations. So that analyze, the connect gets more intelligent and the collect gets much more powerful, and you get to the third layer, which is the analyze layer, which is where really the apps and analytic, all that comes in, all the software element comes in, and there we all said data mining and our ability to arrive insights from the data matters. So smarter control at all 3 layers, the technology, the way it evolved in the last 3 decades in industrial automation is amazing.
Okay.
And so that helps you, whether it's profit, that helps you to optimize resources, directly supporting your sustainability and profitability goal, and helps you with operational excellence, which is exactly you wanted. And when these 2 are available, you're optimizing your resources, again directly impacting sustainability.
Okay.
And then you get to optimize asset. This is on the operation level. The same technologies help you to optimize assets because you're connecting all the assets. And it gives you a capability to get the best out of the assets, return on investment, what you so. And the third element is an empowered workforce with so much of data. The decision making is at much lower level, often mobile and paperless.
Okay,
So I would say.
great. We'll elaborate on some of these points. Narendra, I'll come back to you now. We heard one of the points was on the data. So the data management and transparency of that data. So pharma is an industry, you are collating and accumulating a humongous amount of data, and then to derive I'll say meaningful insights out of that data. It's not just analysis. So, and even the data is also coming from very heterogeneous sources. First, for analytics, you need some sort of homogeneity first on that data, and then also you have to ensure that there is transparency of that data and proper management. So, as a CDO, how are pharma companies looking at achieving that, and what are the challenges that still remain?
I think as a CDO, I dealt with this question, and in fact, I still deal with most of the. Well, I would say less talked topic is about data governance policies, and pharma industry is one such industry where it is extremely complex. There are data sets which we'll have to maintain for years, some of it for few tens of years, and research data are probably perpetual. So data governance becomes extremely critical. Second part is the data quality. Before transparency, the quality comes.
Exactly.
Right? So data should have sufficient quality to be actually extract any meaningful insight out of that one. Okay, I think that is another big challenge, and I see it across the pharma industry. Okay, not just limited to a few companies. Third is I think change management. The mentality from what was before COVID, I would say, and after COVID. Okay? There is a big, I would say, digital has also has a culture. So there is a big cultural shock for the people who have believed in paper, who have believed in maintaining records in a particular way, by moving to a completely digital records. And if you talk about L2 integration, people who have been using all paper-based BMR now coming to digital. Maybe first they have paper on glass to a completely L2 integrated system.
Exactly.
This is a big change for them. Okay, for them, the data can tell whether there are some inefficiencies in the system. They first look back. They say no, it is not possible. They come back, question, and then we figure out that if there is something, then there is definitely something, right? So a lot of models and other things we build, we also have to overlay. We cannot really talk purely data points because we have to overlay the functional knowledge, the
Exactly.
deep functional knowledge that is retained by these people who have been working in the industry for last 10, 15, 20, maybe 30 years.
Without that, the data is meaningless.
Yeah. So there are multiple challenges that happens for them to see data in a different way. We have been able to extract some of the very funny and some of the very serious insights out of the data, which probably these business people have never expected that something like this that can come out, right? So change management is another very, very important aspect. And the fifth would be compliance. I think the compliance point, and people who work in compliance, particularly QA, QC people, I think that is the most difficult segment of people to
Exactly.
move. And I think many of my colleagues will also agree that change is happening, but that change is probably rather slow than what we would have expected otherwise.
Okay, thanks. So, in fact, Dr. Manjula, I'll come to you on that compliance now. Just summing up, two very important points you mentioned on data governance and change management, and maybe Senthil, I'll come to you later on this change management and data governance, two other things. Manjula, I'll come to you now. On the compliance, pharma, heavily regulated industry, and there are compliances in different geographies. It's a global business. and you are undertaking this digital transformation. At the same time, you have to conform to these multiple compliances. How do you manage? How's the synergy?
I think it's a tough challenge, and I think, as you know, our industry is most regulated, one of the most complex and pretty sensitive operations that we carry across. And now these days, regulators, you're talking about compliance globally, but the regulators are now become smarter. They talk to each other, right? So if you have any non-compliance in any of the geographies or any of the regulators, they would get to know. If you say, for example, even if you have a challenge with regulators, say in Malaysia, I mean, USFDA will get to know, and vice versa, right? So they have become a community and they keep an eye on what is happening in the industry in general. Now, the compliance part from the regulatory perspective is impacting, not only the manufacturing, but also the research and development and bioequivalent studies and all what we do and submit as the data. And there are a number of challenges that USFDA has found in country like ours, India especially, and many of our companies, so even some of the sitting here have found problems with the USFDA. So one of the interesting ideas that has been floating around is introducing blockchain. Although it's a sort of fintech, borrowing this idea from fintech, but any intervention that has been made at any time of any point on the process in the research, development, bioequivalence, manufacturing, and a number of stages of bioequivalence, number of stages in manufacturing. So if somehow there is a element or a process or a technology like blockchain, that is something that USFDA is really seriously looking at, and we have looked into it. How can it be more secure? So that is part number one. The other part is quality, really, because product recalls are very expensive, right? And will you be surprised to know that there are at least 6 small or large recalls, product recalls in US alone every day. And that costs annually somewhere around $36 billion. And this recall is interestingly growing at a CAGR of 20%, right? Product recall. So you can imagine the revenue loss and the challenges that they have. So there has to be, some mechanism where we tighten the quality part and the detection of the...
Just interrupting here, is it as the companies are trying to reduce the product life cycle, is this recall thing happening more as a consequence of that?
Not necessarily, no. Because it's a very general phenomenon, and everybody is, because the processes are so complex, and you can falter on one of the 100 things, and it will just come out as a challenge with the quality of the product. And it's just the product; it's packaging also, right? And one of the interesting thing I wanted to talk with the technology guys around. We are, looking at talking to a company which has come out with detection of quality of the finished goods, right? Okay. It is very difficult to, there are mechanisms and there are processes in place for currently, but when the products are packed, sometimes in opaque packaging and bottles and so many things, it's not easy to get the quality right. So we are talking to a company which has, we're talking about AI and ML in next phase. Harsh talked about it. But this company is looking at spectroscopy, which will look at the product and the packaging, and this can look through the packaging, including plastics and HDP and whatever else. And it is non-invasive, non-hazardous, non-toxic. So there's no problem with the the spectroscopy that they use. It will come out with the use of AI and ML with a fingerprint of digital fingerprint of that particular product, right? And it can compare in the background with the reference fingerprint that you would have with the product and the reference product that you have, right? And it will come out with because it is very difficult to pick up the defects with the opaque environment, packaging, and so on. So they are looking at making it USFDA approval. In time to come, that might be a norm. Who knows?
Okay.
So AI and ML is no more futuristic. It is already in the process.
Exactly. So you're saying for the life sciences sector, leveraging AI and ML is now mainstream. Great. I'll come to you now. And as you're looking at both Europe and the emerging markets globally, and we earlier talked, one of the themes of the evening is on around sustainability. So when you are talking about this digital transformation, how sustainability can be a successful outcome. So what are some of these global best practices that can be replicable in the Indian scenario, especially when you are trying to achieve the sustainability part?
Thanks. Very relevant question. I would in fact say it is not that we have to get inspired from something which is happening in market and replicate, because most of the companies have a widespread global footprint. It is about adopting this such that what is mandated, regulated in one market becomes gives us an edge in some of the markets that follow. Because see, we would have common sites, right? We would not have market specific sites typically. So from an internal process perspective, I think it's important to run pilots and then replicate it to the wider network of plants, rather than looking at a best practice in one market and trying to replicate. But if you turn the prism and say what are the best practices from the commercial side, and then which you would want to replicate in a market, then there are a lot of learnings. For example, the digital engagement with healthcare practitioners in markets like Europe and Spain is phenomenally higher and leaves a lot of room for some of the emerging markets to adopt. Of course, it's not comparable, the healthcare models there, but most of the companies are trying to adopt. And in the advent of COVID, that has accelerated significantly.
Exactly.
Secondly, some of the processes around pharmacovigilance, some of the processes around clinical trials, they have seen an acceleration in the digital adoption. E-clinical trials was a dream, or not even a dream, right? 5 years back. And today, suddenly, it's a reality. Same is the case with PV processes. Very early in my career, I was part of the adverse event reporting function 15, 20 years back. It was completely paper-based. And today, forget a paper, you can operate on QRs. And these are the spaces where you can see a lot of inspiration coming from markets like Europe into relatively emerging markets like Brazil, Morocco, India, and likes the big markets in some parts of Africa.
Okay, thanks. Kishan, since you earlier talked about operationally, even pharma manufacturing is now moving to a multi-cloud kind of environment. In this, we will have maybe some applications on private clouds, that too from different service providers. Some not so critical applications can be on the public cloud. There are applications on the edge maybe. And you overall need to manage that whole thing. And I would like to understand how this shift to a hybrid cloud model has redefined some of the pharma business processes. And just an addition to that, you are working with multiple third-party solution providers there. So how is the challenge in having that relation and managing those multiple solution providers also? And I'm not just talking in terms of SLAs, obviously those are hygiene now. You will have stringent SLAs, but beyond that, how are you looking at it?
A couple of things we can say with respect to the data which you mentioned in the starting. Why I want to say, starting with that, the major challenge which we see it with respect to the data visibility, because our data is lying on the laptops and the production OT environment, multi-cloud, multi-applications which are there. The major challenge which we see it we can overcome them depending upon the business need. You have to choose the application and to host it in a cloud-based or a SaaS model, which will help us to do the faster processing. Manju has clearly mentioned one point which I liked it with respect to the blockchain. Lots of medicines are available in the dark web, which can be easily purchased, which are critical, which will not be easily available in the market. So we can leverage the blockchain kind of application on a SaaS provider service for the specific for this specific medicines. Now coming to back to the multi-cloud, which you say that, see, it's totally depending upon the organization, how you will be developing the policies and the technologies which you want to incorporate for as per your need. So you'll be able to monitor that, or you'll be able to manage them effectively. Even if it is lying in a multi-cloud or on-premise or multiple SaaS providers, you'll be able to perfectly manage them. Now, other thing is that how do you manage them? What kind of access you will allow the other parties to have it on them? That is one of the major inputs which will help you to manage them effectively. The second point which I can see it now more and after the COVID, because now everybody started working from home or working from anywhere. So people started moving to the SaaS platforms where you'll be able to easily reach or easily able to create the things which can be submitted to the regulatory bodies, we can say it. Apart from that, one more major which we initiation, everybody started putting the QR codes on the medicines. So you'll be able to scan it wherever you need it, and you'll be able to, and the supply chain is always will be needed to move the data or a medicine from one location to the another location.
Okay,
So,
thanks. Again, important point. Before I come to you, Senthil, so we heard about regulatory compliances. We heard about quality. We heard about data governance. It's very critical. We heard about some of the best practices. We heard even in a multi-cloud kind of scenario how so pharma companies might be having now infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, all the SaaS, PaaS, IaaS, all the models might be there. Then obviously there are certain applications on the edge. So as a solution provider, when all the scenario you have heard, so again, coming back more as a consultative role, what would your recommendations be for the CIOs here, and I'm sure even the other companies who are present here?
Yeah. Wonderful question again. And Mr. Masood spoke on visibility and Kishan as well as visibility. Automation, investment into digitalization is not something we start today. The process has started almost 3 decades back. So it's natural for us to have host of platforms, proprietary solutions. So now we need to unify to get the visibility. And Harsh has given some of the possibilities and when he presented a few minutes back. Deriving from there, the suggestion would be the architectures, whatever we bring in needs to be first open. Okay, the technology, whatever we bring in, either in L2 level, which is the collect level, or the real brain, the control level of the process production, or at the analytical level. We need to have open architectures. And then second, this needs to be scalable. When I said open to any of the vendor, it should be vendor agnostic. We should be in a position to collect data and in a position to control us. And then an example is one of the software Schneider brought in is Aviva range of software at L3 analytic level. It doesn't matter whether you have an underlying Siemens or ABB or Schneider, whatever may be the solution, it will be in a position to integrate. And that's exactly what you're looking at. And second, scalability it provides. Scalability comes at the L2 level, and we are getting into that was agnostic software at the L3 level. Now I'm talking about agnostic hardware at the L2 level itself. We are moving to a stage where much more PC-based process control. And that's where Schneider's solution is EcoStruxure Automation Expert, where again, it doesn't matter what kind of.
So when you are talking about the scalability, one of the panelists mentioned on change management.
Absolutely.
So how exactly that will lead to better adoption of change management?
Yeah. So when I talk about scalability here, it doesn't, we don't need to have the full picture in the beginning when we get into the project. So the architectures can be built in brick by brick. Have a core, center brain, the central nervous system, and bring completely around that. So when you want to make a change, I've been in a pharma industry as well, and it's very difficult. Rapid pace of development And then often the end in mind is not clear when we begin, right? So when you have architectures which is open and scalable, and that really helps for us. So that
Thanks.
would be the suggestion.
Thanks. So we'll have the one last round, and it's I may say, a rapid fire round. 30 seconds to each panelist, and I'll start again with you, Narendra. In this sequence only we will follow. My question is, digital transformation, we are talking specifically. I don't want, obviously, it will be sensitive information. Without going into specifics, if we look at the next maybe 18 to 24 months time frame, what are the two key action plans that is in your digital transformation roadmap?
I think overhauling the entire backend enterprise architecture, that's one of the key part, which is along with, of course, the data governance policy implementation. That's one thing. And second thing would be is to drive profitability.
Okay. Thanks. Yes.
I see. For us, I think ESG is of utmost importance, and we have some of our plants who have already reached there, and we want to extend it to the larger infrastructure of plants, depots, and the entire backend. So that becomes very important. And the second, in big, deep markets, have a larger patient engagement through digital platforms, through omni-channel engagement. So these would be
Okay.
two things.
In fact, omni-channel engagement, maybe in terms of enhancing the customer experience, that's a critical area. Yes.
Yeah, we are in the process of expanding our capacity by building a couple of new plants. And when you have a new plants, we naturally would like to implement Industry 4.0 right away. So we are thinking about automating our manufacturing and quality control processes. That's where our focus is at the moment.
Okay, Krishan.
I will say the consolidation of the applications, maybe at a central level. And apart from that, ZTNA will be like a zero trust network, trust but verify for each and everything which is coming to your way. This should be the priority because we are working in hybrid models nowadays. And then we want our business to grow, and without any impact, it should run.
This zero trust, I know it's a favorite term now, but how would you define it? Is it a framework? Is it a concept? Or how, especially from a pharma perspective, how will you define it?
It's a framework through which means whatever, as panelist has mentioned, how you are collecting the data, how you are submitting to the external world, how our employees are coming to our infrastructure to get that access and produce that data. But how do you know that only Kishan is coming inside and accessing that data? How do you trust I am the Kishan? Manju can come and then access that data. But I will trust him, but I will verify him.
Okay.
That's the framework through which you'll be able to access your internal applications over the outside. How do you know that who is the right person and accessing that data or not performing any malicious activity?
Okay.
So this is the framework.
Yes.
I think it started with the concept. Then the framework is more agile. That means we continue to develop the framework as and when more and more threats keep appearing. That means we have to continuously update our system. And so it starts with the concept. So when your question was concept or a framework, I think concept with a dynamic framework that we apply.
Exactly, it has to be dynamic. Okay. Senthil, the last word is with you. Again, you heard the action plan. So from a solution provider perspective, I will rephrase it differently. What are your action plans, which obviously has to be in sync with the pharma companies? So how would your action plans be framed in the next 4-5 quarters?
Before you start, I just want to
Sure,
add
sure,
one
definitely.
thing. How about the flexibility from the OEMs and the OT space?
That's
Great.
exactly.
Is leading to the conclusion. I just mentioned, I come back to the open and scalable. The flexibility, you get it that at edge control level of your process, production, complete traceability. When you have an open architecture, that provides a flexibility and a scalable architecture. So complete our system, our design is in a way by which we provide an open scalable architecture to the customer. So that provides flexibility one. Coming back to your question, it's very evident from the conversation. Everybody understands data, and then looking at the panel here, everybody has a role to play. And so it's about the visibility. There are islands of data, precious data. Mr. Masood spoke on the visibility. Mr. Kishan spoke on the visibility. It's about connecting all these data, providing a single pane visibility as Hush displayed there of every process from connect, collect, and analyze. Once you are in a position to leverage the technologies and revolutionize all the stages, connect, collect, and analyze place, then the transformation happens there. And our plan is to do this with, as I mentioned, vendor agnostic hardware and vendor agnostic software. I might get into a plant to try to sell many of our product lines. But when we get into digital transformation, our approach is to leverage existing architectures irrespective of vendor, whichever vendor is there, and provide this single window visibility to customer.
Okay. Thanks. So with that, we'll conclude this panel discussion. I'd like to thank all the panelists again for really providing deep insights into some of the nuances and dynamics of the industry. And each industry comes with its own dynamics and own challenges. So thanking you, all of you again, and we would now continue with the next discussion. Thanks. Thank you.